Hello, all you widows, and welcome to a dual review. I'm doing a review here with my man, Gray. What up, Gray?
Hey, what up, Jim? Are you Genki? That's what I want to ask you.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm pretty tired. I was asked if we were going to end up doing a live review of the Aquaman, like make it a big to-do or whatnot.
Oh, really?
And I said, no, I may get to it. And then you actually asked me to review a couple books because we're going to be doing this. And if people are interested in Marvel, we'll be doing a new Champions review as well. So I was glad that you ended up asking me because I always say to people, yeah, I'm going to do a solo review. And it never happens. I don't know what happens. I end up getting lazy or tired or whatnot. I have to edit things. So I'm glad that you were joining me for this as we go into Aquaman and a new book by Jeremy Adams. And Jeremy Adams, to me, is easily the most beloved writer at DC right now, and a guy who people end up trusting. And I trust him as well. When this was announced, I was all in. All in. I wasn't even making a joke. Oh, my goodness. I was all in because Jeremy Adams, I've said over and over that until he screws me over, I will trust him and read and review everything.
Well, I've been hyped for this, and this is via you. You got me hyped for the Flash, when he was doing that. So I've been following him since then, Green Lantern, and now I'm looking forward to this. But I told you, Jim, I warned you, I don't know much about Aquaman. This is new character for me.
Yeah, it's funny because when I'm newer into comics than you are. I started reading comics with the New 52 in 2012, a year after it started. The first book that I picked up, not even knowing, was Aquaman, which was Jeff Johns' run that people will say was a definitive run of it.
Oh, that's supposed to be really good, isn't it?
It was really good. The thing is, though, that just as a disclaimer, I never thought that Aquaman was a joke. I always loved Aquaman. I always thought he was cool. I always wanted to breathe underwater. At one point, I tried to and almost drowned. And I ended up
David Blaine.
way back, there was a cartoon called Marine Boy that not a lot of people will know of, but he had this like aqua gum where he would eat this gum and he'd be able to breathe underwater. And it was like the shape of trident gum. I tried it out. It didn't work. And I sucked in a lot of water at that point. So I had problems, but I always loved Aquaman. I always thought it was cool, even in the Super Friends.
For you, the one issue I did try, this is going back to, I just checked it, 2007, it was issue 50 when the fantasy novelist called Tad Williams took over. So I just read that one issue and I didn't continue. I've heard since then that it's not really held in high regard, his run. I don't know how long it lasted. But.
And so in that, I've read everything since the New 52 started of Aquaman, all the runs, Dan Abnett, Cullen Bunn, which a lot of people didn't like, Jeff Parker, and through even Kelly Sue DeConnick, that people ended up not liking as well. The problem is that for Aquaman fans, haven't had much of Aquaman. He's disappeared. At one point, they were pushing Jackson Hyde as the new Aquaman, then even the Aquaman book, the Brandon Thomas stuff that wasn't really good, in my opinion. But now we're back to proper Aquaman. So me being excited about this is dual. It's being excited that Jeremy Adams is on another book, and thank God. And thanks to everybody. Everybody listening, anybody who loves Jeremy Adams, I'm sure that he would really want to shake everybody's hand because at one point he was worried that he was not going to be at DC or even in comics after he got kicked off of Flash. Then luckily he ended up getting Green Lantern because Mariko Tamaki pulled out. And now since then, DC finally learned. DC will learn. It just takes them like 5 extra years, it seems, to realize what they have. And they're lucky. They're lucky that they realized what they had because, he could have went, say, to Marvel. He ends up having Flash, Gordon, and those sort of things. But luckily he's there and he's doing this, the Green Lantern stuff, and he has more and more books. It's getting to the point where people were begging for him to be on books. Now he's probably begging for them to slow down a bit. He's on so many, but he's good. He is really good. But we'll get into this. I'll give you the credits. It's Aquaman #1. Written by Jeremy Adams, art by John Timms, colors by Rex Locust, letters by Dave Sharp. And one of the things that I don't talk a ton about, I know that I kind of get lax with it and people yell at me, is art. I'm more of a story guy. Maybe it's because I can't see worth a crap, but in this, I like John Timms. I've liked John Timms before on a bunch of other books. I don't know if I love him on this, and I think that people might get upset at us because I don't love this issue. I like it. I just don't love it. And by the end, maybe it's because of Jeremy Adams and I expect so much. And I love Aquaman. I did expect a little more from this issue. I think we're going to get it eventually. I think that Jeremy Adams is going to, heat it up. He's going to cook, as the kids say, because it kind of happened with the Green Lantern book as well. And now everybody loves that. It was a little bit of a slower start. And in that, he kind of got handcuffed a bit because, you had the quarantine and all that stuff, that crazy stuff with Hal Jordan. Kind of get that here. The idea that it's really tied in absolute power. Not everybody's read that, but if you haven't, it's fine. But it's tied in that. Then it ties into stuff that happened, say, 6 years ago. Then it ends up having weird power changes. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
And I think that Jeremy Adams, for this, decided for this first issue to give you the lay of the land, give you the idea of here is how things are, to get to this cliffhanger at the end that seems to change everything. So we'll see what is happening. But like I said, I like John Timms, but some of the faces seem off. Some of the, and it may be that he's kind of getting used to it too. His art might get better as well.
Me too. I'm not that familiar with him, John Timms. I've heard the name, that's all. But for me overall, I don't know. There are some pages I really like. There's some great, moments. But as you say, something about the characters' faces, plasticine. It's like Mr. Potato Head sometimes.
Yeah. At points it even looks like it's like color forms or like action figures type things. We said that, but it doesn't throw me out of it. It's just that I don't know. I maybe wanted a little more gritty. I want it to be big and colorful, but we'll see. And we'll see what other people think as well. But it starts out to give you the lay of the land. Arthur tells you, hey, I'm king again. This is something, if you have been following the Aquaman books, they ended up not having a king anymore. Mara was queen at one point. Then they decided we're not going to have a king. The problem is, I think Jeremy Adams is doing this not for story beats. I think that he's doing it because so many people since then have messed it up. You ended up where everybody who came back or, did some, John Layman ended up doing it. Some other people did, where just randomly in books, they're like, oh, the king of Atlantis, Aquaman. And every time we were on the podcast saying, no, he isn't anymore. Why are they messing this up? And I think Jeremy Adams is like throwing out, a life preserver to everybody and saying, I got you. We'll just say that he is. And they say here, well, everything's been messed up recently, so I decided that I should be king. We'll sort things out, whatnot. The problem is that I'm not a guy who loves people having jobs in comics, because I'd rather see them do superhero things than work in a diner, cleaning, doing dishes. And usually what happens, even somebody like a Barry Allen, that guy hasn't been to work in 20 years. Like in the runs, the only time he'll go to work is if somehow you need that crime scene. You need that for the thing. Usually it's not that exciting, so you don't do it. So being king and having to sit there and just listen, it happened with Thor. When Thor ended up, being all father, and he's like, this is boring. It always ends up that way. And it kind of does in this, but it's okay.
They make it clear, even on the solicit, Jim, it's like, he opens up the solicit, like, new powers, new mission, the king is back, baby. They make that really big and clear. So what do you think? You were saying maybe possibly DC might have wanted him to do this, to make him the king or make it clear he's the king again.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic. So why not do it? And it's probably going to end up being
like a reset, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and again, he's the king, and then at the end he just disappears, and Atlantis is done. He's king for a day again.
Wasn't the king for long.
Yeah, really, it's done.
Oh my God.
So he ends up saving a plane at the beginning. It's really only to show that he has Mara's aquakinesis. He has taken her powers, they were given to him after the absolute power. But what does she have? They don't really explain. Is she just completely powerless? I guess. That kind of sucks. Now, we're eventually going to figure out in the books, maybe even the Atom Project. It seems like they're heavy on that to get the powers back to the characters. But it's, I like Mara. I like Mara with Aquaman. And then she's just there like, okay, do this, that. And she doesn't seem mad at all.
She's kind of in the background, isn't she?
Yeah, and she doesn't even bat an eye. I would think that she's kind of pissed off, but she's like, yeah, you're doing pretty good. He ends up with the aquakinesis, saves this plane. And then you go down to Atlantis, where he has to go talk official business. And again, he gets bored. But right before that, Jackson Hyde comes in. And just, again, some of these things I think feel a little forced in this issue, where Jackson just shows up and says, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this magical pearl I have.
The strange pearl.
And it's like, what? What are you talking about, a pearl? It's weird. It's a really weird pearl. And you get an editor's note that this pearl was from Flashpoint Beyond #1. The Flash, number 785, and also Batman Brave and the Bold, number 18. I read 2 of those 3. I didn't read Batman Brave and the Bold 18. I don't remember this Pearl, but there it is. And it's just like, hey, we have to mention this Pearl because it's going to be a big thing. And that just kind of gets pushed aside. You get to see Andy, which is great, but I'd love to see more of her. I hope that the story with, them disappearing and Aquaman going off as well, I hope that gets resolved so we could get a little bit more of family time, because that's what I was hoping, because that's what Jeremy Adams does great when he does it. Well, he ends up where he's, almost feels like it's like The Godfather as well, where it's the day of my daughter's wedding, so everybody could come and ask me a favor. Well, everybody's bitching and moaning about, hey, this border here and this seaweed and that shark, and he's bored.
He looks so bored, doesn't he? Look at that. That's a great image, actually. One of the funnier ones.
The idea, though, if you really think about it, this guy hasn't been king for a while, decides to be king because things are going bad or had gone bad with absolute power, things like that. Now he's king and he's bored within 3 minutes.
Heavy is the crown, Jim.
Yeah, heavy is the crown of the bored man. Heavy is the crown. I guess he has ADHD, because I could see me like, what is going on here? And so he's hoping that there's a disaster that happens that he could leave, that he has, and it does. There is on Daytona Beach, Florida, there is a disaster. There is a giant hydro monster kaiju.
Kaiju, yeah.
And he goes to it. And again, this is where you get this deal. He says, I kind of recognize this. And there's an editor's note. It says, as if you missed Justice League Aquaman drowned Earth. That happened in 2019.
There's going to be, I can't remember it, Jim.
There's going to be, it was like right before Metal and stuff like that. This is something that people not only they didn't miss because they never read it.
Yeah, never mind as if you missed it, as if you could remember, as if you forgot.
And in that, I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. I read it. I reviewed it. I can't remember, but it doesn't really matter anyway, because he just kind of wants to try to use telekinesis. It comes through in his mind. It's made of water and I can kind of control water. And now I'm going to fly through it. Boom. And it slaps him, but eventually it just kind of disappears. And these poor people.
It slaps him through a building's wall, doesn't it? Into someone's, is it bedroom or someone's room here?
Yeah, it's like these poor people are at Daytona. A little old for Daytona, I think, but maybe they're down for spring break. They end up where these poor people get their vacation here, and then the next thing you know, Aquaman comes flying through the thing, ruins the room, and then just flies out again.
Lands on the toilet. As he flies out there, the old man's hat kind of lifts off.
Yeah, then the guy's hat comes off, right? It's like whenever there's a cartoon and there's like some sexy lady in the hat joke. But he flies off, tells him to stand back, and he goes to face this thing, and it kind of just like explodes. And then all of a sudden
dissipates.
He hears in his head Mara yelling. So he goes, oh no, I got to get back to Atlantis. And again, some of these things I think are going to end up working out well. They just, in this issue, coming back for this number 1, I really wish this first issue, and I say it a lot about these first issues, not that I need Aquaman to be shown to be cool, because if you know Aquaman, I think you know he is. I think you're buying the book because of Jeremy Adams and Aquaman anyway. But the idea, I kind of wish we had a little bit of half an issue of the family, Andy, Mara, talk about the hydrokinesis and how it's affecting Mara not having that. Talk a little more to Jackson, get a lot of other characters involved. I think that too much starts coming at you here, where fighting Kaiju water monster, Mara, oh my God, goes back to Atlantis. Atlantis is destroyed.
Too fast, Jim, isn't it? It's moving too fast.
That's what I think.
You should have more time with the family, a little bit more setup, a little bit more like explanation. But it's like he's hurrying to get this big kaiju action
And that's
scene.
the thing. I think that when you get to it, maybe we'll find, okay, he wants to get to really cool stuff, so he's rushing it a little here.
Yeah.
We'll have time later to go and do the family stuff. And it is him going to save the family, but it just felt like too much. Like, well, I wanted to ease in a bit, see how cool it is. I know Jeremy Adams' strengths are really the family, so I'm like, all right. And then all of a sudden, we're going 100 miles an hour in a direction I didn't know we were going. So he goes to Atlantis is destroyed. Again, he isn't king for a while, decides, I'm going to be king, gets bored within 3 minutes. We're all excited that Aquaman's back. Atlantis is destroyed within
crazy,
5 pages.
Yeah, he comes back in the scene. It's like, Atlantis is gone. What's happened?
It's gone. And that Pearl's there. So in that, again, I think that he's trying to get to something. It just feels a little too quick. But then he goes up to the Watchtower. And really, to me, this is a weird play I don't know if anybody else is going to feel like this, but Aquaman doesn't really seem like he's that concerned. He goes up and he's just like, hey, I got to talk to Batman.
Yeah, where's Batman?
He's like, hey, Batman, this pearl. And Zatanna's like, I can't figure out what it is. Not one point does he seem like, he's like, come on, hurry up, or I got to go. Like, even that they say, are your family dead? Or is everybody dead? And he goes, I don't know.
I don't know.
He goes, dead? I don't know. All of Atlantis is gone, save for that pearl. He doesn't seem that upset. Now, you can say it's because these things happen all the time or whatnot, but Batman seems good. Are they dead? Like, Batman's asking. He's like, almost like he didn't, when he says dead, like he is, it didn't even cross his mind.
Maybe he's in shock, Jim. That's the only excuse. It is strange. He doesn't look like frantic at all, does he? He's just like, okay, this happened and what happened.
He actually seems like the guy who is
the calmest.
On the outskirts, the calmest guy saying, everybody calm down, we'll figure this out, when I think in my mind should be just losing it here. Especially the idea you could even pull in that, oh my God, I've been the king of Atlantis for a hot afternoon and everything's gone to hell. What's going on? But yeah, just a ton of
Batman in Gotham City, he destroyed again.
Yeah, Batman's like, oh well, must be Tuesday. Must be another Tuesday.
That's it.
One of the other things I'll pull out there and ask everybody what they think of, and I mentioned this on the podcast, but Zatanna's here and she's going through magic and she's like, this thing is out of my reach. It's like there, but it isn't. What happened? All these powers end up getting wonky. People are getting different powers, whatever. That magic stuff was never fully spelled out or resolved. Why didn't the same thing happen to the magic users? Why, when they did it? Because remember, at one point, they couldn't remember how to do magic. Well, would have been cool if we saw at least one of them who still couldn't, was trying. But that kind of got wiped away. It's just these powers, which again, the power swapping just happened at the very end in a couple panels. If you remember, Black Canary had heat vision. We've never seen that since. And Plastic Man was phasing through things. But here's where Aquaman says, well, I'm going to go and check out. They found a vibration. You end up having Zatanna say, go and find this. He gets the pearl, which now, I don't know, this thing's getting bigger and bigger. And it leads him to this place. This really felt a lot like the Kelly Sue DeConnick run with the gods and things like that. I was worried of that.
Oh,
but,
really?
This pearl ends up taking him to this place. And even then, it feels weird. It feels like, and this happened in the JSA book last week, where you ended up having Kendra, Hawkgirl, says, I got to go get Carter. I sense that I have to go get him. And Alan Scott's like, well, see you later. Have fun in hell. At this point, Aquaman's like, I think I need to go find, and it seems like Batman and Wonder Woman are like, whatever, dude, we'll see you later. Even Wonder Woman says, then go with the blessing of the gods. I'm like, maybe he needs some help. Like, maybe you could go with them, but they're not.
Go.
Yeah,
go
so
quickly.
they're like, all right. And he goes into this, what looks like a gate.
Yes, it is. It looks like a portal, doesn't it? Like from Stargate or something.
He says, I have to go. And Batman says it could be a trap. And then Wonder Woman just goes, go. Just go.
Go with the blessing of the gods. It's like, for God's sake, we get out of here.
Yeah, I wanted Aquaman to be like, I kind of was hoping one of you
wants to date with Batman. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Just.
she's like, she's sick of wearing this aqua gear. She wants to get out of the ocean. And he's like, okay, well, off I go. Thanks a lot for nothing. And then he goes and the thing explodes. And then you end up with the cliffhanger. And this gate then now is turned into a mega symbol. It looks like Darkseid.
It's revealed, isn't it? It was under all the moss or seaweed and stuff. It's like, what's this? Huge symbol.
And all of a sudden they end up where, there's electricity down there and whatnot. And it's like, oh no. And I like where it's the biggest thing here. And Wonder Woman goes, Bruce, first off, don't do that on comms, Wonder Woman. But the other thing is like, yeah, I think he sees it. He says, I see it. And God help Arthur. God help us all. And there you go. It ends. And again, I like it. I didn't love it. I expected to love it. I expected that I was going to get done this book and like, oh my God, I have this huge smile on my face. I can't wait to tell everybody it's great. I think it will get there. I do trust Jeremy Adams. This first issue, though, I thought was a little wonky. I thought it was a little wonky to get where we're going and to a point where some things seemed odd or even, pushed aside. Jackson just shows up and says, hey, I have this pearl. Okay, thanks.
It's like 3 panels, isn't it? And he's gone. Yeah.
And not going in enough with the getting Maris powers. Not even really. I know you don't have to explain a ton with him being king, but that is a big thing. And I wanted to see some Andy. I wanted to see some interactions because while we haven't had Aquaman in a while, we haven't had Andy either. we've had a bit of Mara, but not much. Like, I wanted more of that and then get to the big thing. But obviously, with the dark side type deal at the end and this sort of thing, it seems like it's elevating the book a bit, maybe even connecting a bit with the New Gods. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, and even then, when I get to the end and I saw the Aquaman is back, baby. But first, I just saw Aquaman and baby. I'm like, oh no, where's Black Manta? But with all that, we'll see how it goes.
I enjoyed it too, Jim. I enjoyed it. Like you, I think we were both like maybe a bit too hyped up for it. We were expecting it to be, fantastic. Still enjoyed it. I hope this doesn't sound too negative, this review, but
yeah, I still think everybody should pick it up.
Yeah, definitely. Please do. Give it a shot.
Yeah, but my score, me and you already talked about it. We have the same score, but what is our score, Greg?
I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I'm a 7.5 as well. Again, don't get upset.
That is a good score, folks.
And saying it's a 7.5, I'm not saying that I don't love Jeremy Adams as a writer. We're both being honest. And that's the thing. I have said and joked that I'm going to be more positive in 2025. But when it comes to reviews, I'm not going to fake the funk. I'm not going to say, okay, everybody's going to think this is great. And you could easily come in here and say it's a 9 and nobody's going to bat an eye. But truly, I think it's a 7.5. I think some of the things are a little bit wonky to start out with. I think that we have to settle down a little. I think
the pacing's off. It's too fast at times, and it's it goes too quickly. And you're like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I mean, I just didn't feel like Arthur was that upset. And I know different heroes or whatnot, but I think that he would have shown a little bit more. And just this pearl, and it just kind of was weird. But with that, I hope that people did enjoy it. I hope that people end up reading it, and tell us what you think. Tell us if you think we're wrong. Give us the reasons why. And that is great. That's fine. And I hope that people do like it way more than us. And I hope people read it. So thanks for joining me as always, Gray. But
You're
that
welcome.
is it. And hopefully you'll be joining me for more. We could do a ton. We could do. We'll just
Let's
keep reviewing
do it.
Everything.
Take over YouTube.
Again, if people end up wanting to see what me and you think of New Champions, a Steve Fox book, maybe surprising some people, but check that out as well. But thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.